Well, on a serious note, we did talk about the flexibility of Tempo Storm before that, but let's look at the other side, because SpaceStation has shown a lot of flexibility, some of the most heroes played so far as we look at HGC North America, but they've also shown their role swap. They had a role swap with Casanova going back to tank versus Gale Force, and props to them for recognizing that they needed to do something. It's unfortunate that they had to do it versus Gale Force, who they were tied with in standings, but they felt they needed to. My concern, though, is that they need to curb the flexibility at this point. They need to, while they have this role swap, make sure that they have some synergies that they can rely on, and make sure there was a weird sound happening. Sorry. But yeah, just curb that flexibility just a little bit. Because otherwise, when we look sometimes at statistically in North America, when you have so many different heroes that you're playing, you can really struggle to identify what's going to work for you as a team.
Yeah, you know, Gilly, this was actually something that I looked at pretty in depth last year, was the flexibility. What was good, what was bad, and what was kind of the average. And when we looked at a team like Ballistics last year, who were consistently near the top, they actually had some of the least amount of played heroes.
Right.
Then you looked at somebody like Dignitas, who has a very flexible roster. So it kind of varies team to team. But the teams that were at that far end of the spectrum that had a lot of heroes played, that were in that top 5 most heroes played, were actually some of the weaker teams in terms of their win-loss record. Sometimes a little bit of consistency can go a long way for some of these teams. We talk about roster consistency. I think hero pool consistency kind of ranks up there in terms of playing with people you know and playing within the meta, and a much more narrow hero pool without limiting it too much. So that is a very good point.
Yeah, you want to have some diversity, and you want to make sure that if you get certain heroes picked away from you, that you don't struggle on that end. But you're right, when we looked at teams like Lag Force last year, they had a ton of heroes played, but never really were able to find the kind of success that we were hoping for them. So I'd like to see SpaceStation sort of take a note out of the book of maybe like Heroes Hearth, where they have specific things that a specific plan they go into in each series and try to stick with that and grow off of that. Let's get into the battleground pool now between Tempo Storm and SpaceStation as we get ready for Game 1 of this best of 5. Infernal Shrines, this is a choice of SpaceStation's, though Tempo Storm has shown a lot of prowess on this map. Battlefield of Eternity is the ban for Tempo, and SpaceStation's going to ban Volskaya Foundry.
Tempo has done really well on this battleground, and after our first 2 more unique style drafts, we saw a very plain and simple draft from Tempo Storm, and it doesn't matter what draft they go with, they're able to execute it. They also have relied on Alex Strazo so much on this battleground that it was banned during the second ban. So taking note of that, will they be willing to pick that up in their first 2 picks, since that's all that they get before the second ban? So there could be some potential draft strategies around this for SpaceStation to pick this battleground.
Yeah, Alex Straza was also played by Tomster, so it could go for either team. But for Tempo Storm, Alex Straza is one of the 2 main heroes as far as Shrine Control. They also like playing a lot of Ragnaros on this map. And they're currently sitting at 4-0. They have beaten such teams as Team 12 here, Team Freedom, and then every other team that they have played in a series so far. For Tempo Storm, this is a great starting battleground.
It is, and for SpaceStation, it keeps it a little bit neutral because you know that you'll have the opportunity to fight. We've seen on Sky Temple things like that. Teams struggle. One team gets ahead and they have a hard time coming back. Towers of Doom, things like those battlegrounds. But on Infernal Shrines, similarly it can happen, but your prowess of getting into team fights is definitely much more in your favor.
Tempo Storm, man, we've just seen 2 very distinct stylings of play from them. Versus Heroes Hearth, and then yesterday in Simplicity, it was a lot more about having this early aggression. Except for on this map, it was more so in the control of the rotations and just being domineering in that respect. But they are willing to draft so many different things, and Team 12 and Team Freedom, they tended to play more on the back foot, have to come back later on, but it's cool to see them turn up the heat versus opponents they feel like they're stronger against.
Tyrael, high priority in our matches yesterday and throughout this weekend. Seemingly looking like the first ban here for SpaceStation. Tempo Storm actually does have first pick, so they'll get 3 before the second ban. So that Alex Straza could definitely come into play pre that. Same for the Ragnaros that you alluded to. This with Tyrael being gone, Hanzo's being let through, but that Tyrael Greymane pairing has kind of been there, but a lot of teams right now are focusing on the Tyrael in particular.
Greymane is so up, so is Hanzo. Greymane seems more of a focus for SpaceStation. Tempo kind of going back and forth. It seemed like yesterday, more so in the Greymane. They also picked Medivh on this map, so that is another possibility for either Som or Glaurung, though with the Ragnaros, you would tend to say it would be Psalms Medivh, though we also got a fan at Ragnaros yesterday.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, we got a lot of different strategies from Tempo.
I think for me right now, the same way I look at Zuna is the same way I kind of look at Equinox in terms of their aggression. They both like to be aggressive. They both like to make plays. That's actually something that Psalm noted when I talked to him earlier this week about this, curbing his aggression. And Greymane kind of gives you that, all right, can I go in? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we've seen a lot of good drafts around that. And so the Greymane priority is a big priority for SpaceStation, but it's almost one of those things. Would it be better to put him on a hero like a Tychus, something along those lines, more of an auto attack style that doesn't have the aggression? Else, pick something that is more aggressive so that you can just play directly into that playstyle. Put him on the Kerrigan for all you care. Like, just find some ways to either complement that or curb it yourself if you're SpaceStation.
Tempo Storm have a lot of ways of being able to deal with that aggression, though. Like, I think they're fully expecting to see potentially that Greymane for Equinox. He was playing it yesterday, and they also, in the winner's interview, Psalm said that they were going to be picking on Casanova a little bit. And I wondered if that was going to be draft-centered, trying to go in for a warrior choke for Casanova. And we might see a warrior here to try to complement, make sure he gets what he wants, which he gets his Anubarak. Or we see them punish that by making sure that they get stronger picks, knowing that the warrior is going to have to be higher up for SpaceStation, and then do things like punish him in-game, you know, focus on any over-aggression for him. If he's playing a weaker side tank, then maybe try to get something done with him too, looking at positioning. I didn't know if it would be drafting or in-game, but expect to see that.
Yeah, you know, looking at this draft in particular, the Anubarak stands out to me the most. Anubarak Greymane are great diving, but I feel like if they're going to play this mix and match sort of style, you have Anubarak diving in, Greymane potentially diving in, and if the rest of that is kind of that back line, the picking on Casanova part could come in the form of if the Anubarak is the main tank, although we've seen some double tank style setup, maybe Arthas joins him up there. But if you don't have that aggression, that full frontal aggression there with another tank, then it could be something where they're split and Casanova could get picked on in that regards.
Uther and Tassadar adding to the supporting of Hanzo and the rest of the heroes to follow for Tempo Storm. Now, Uther is somewhat of a deny from SpaceStation to have that to help the Greymane. We've been talking a lot about Uther Greymane this weekend, and SpaceStation themselves banned Tyrael, so that's not available as a way of enabling Equinox's Greymane or Jay Shrita's.
I feel if you're SpaceStation and you are not picking up Arthas yourself, that Arthas almost has to be a ban here. You know, Cattle can play a lot. I mean, there's still ETC on the board. ETC against Anubarak, you know. But when it comes to Arthas, it's more focused on the backline at this point. Do you have that? Maybe you got something else up your sleeves with a little bit more damage. But to deal with the Anubarak and the Greymane, an Arthas is an excellent counter. They're going to ban ETC, so I'd be surprised if SpaceStation doesn't go Arthas at this point.
I would too. It's one of the favored picks of Jason anyway, and he's been sticking more to the tank frontline, although that's sort of been changing as of recently. Picked up a Malthael, he played as Zagara, so he is flexing out to a lot of different heroes, but in the first couple of weeks, it was a lot of Dahaka and then a little bit of Leoric and Arthas.
With Jay Shrite, I wonder if his arsenal in the mage department extends beyond Jaina, extends beyond the Li Ming.
Oh, I would think so.
I would, after watching Mene earlier, I'd be okay with a little bit of Kael'thas action. Infernal Shrines is one of his better battlegrounds. It also does well. Uther, obviously with the armor, I think does well against a lot of Jaina players. And so we've seen him run Jaina on this before. If he has that up his sleeve, maybe a little bit of Gul'dan action. I saw some excellent mage play in Europe just a little while ago. So I think if they're going to go that route, that might be something to consider. Yeah,
I was wondering about Gul'dan too. There's been one Gul'dan, but there's been a lot more Jaina for SpaceStation, definitely. No Malthael though. Malthael continues his trend of being banned in the second ban phase.
So ETC is banned, and Anubarak is already taken. Tempo Storm could always fall back to the likes of a Johanna, play more of that shrine control. You know, they've got Tassadar, you go Johanna, a little bit behind that, maybe a Ragnaros, and you've got excellent shrine control, excellent shrine clear, and also the team fighting capability when you come into that. Diablo, obviously, as we've seen, paired with the Hanzo Tassadar, like that has been pretty stellar, so always got to look out for that as well.
It's his best battleground, without a doubt. He gets a lot done.
It's the flip and dip.
Yeah, the devastating charge, domination, devastating charge. all around the shrines. It's got Devil's Due. You're going to get globes. So many globes. Now, do we get Alexstrasza for Space Station now? Or maybe something...
Alexstrasza complements a dot. Right, especially post level 10. We still get the Jaina. And that's the part that scares me a little bit, is that Alexstrasza can complement you diving in with the Cleansing Flame level 10, just kind of go in, give you heals while simultaneously doing damage, and so you have a priority, like a hotspot, basically. But Jaina, however, has a hard time getting in through the minions, landing those skill shots, especially you go Q build at 4 and 7, getting the Pierce, getting the cooldown. That's much more difficult on Infernal Shrines. You can get the blow-up damage, but it requires more coordination, and the level of difficulty is a little bit higher.
Yeah, maybe he... We've seen a lot more J-Shred to Ring of Frost, right? I'm pretty sure than Water Elemental.
It's
maybe
been
about
a mix,
half and half.
yeah.
Maybe he just tries to throw a ring out as a way of being able to follow and enable the rest of the team.
I mean, you don't have a whole lot of counter engage when it comes to Hanzo Tassadar, but if a Diablo spots you in any form or fashion, if Diablo comes out here, if it's Johanna, you're a bit safer. However, if it's Johanna Ragnaros, then you could look at a Blessed Shield, Sophia, or Smash.
Ragnaros, definitely. Ooh, Blaze.
Time to light it up.
That's a fiery composition for Tempo Storm.
Hey.
Game 1. That's the first Caterpillar Blaze, too.
A lot of people trying out newest hero in the Nexus is Blaze, and I imagine a lot of people will be trying out our next hero, Maev, in a short while as well.
Sam's favorite hero comes out on his birthday.
I'm not a melee assassin player outside of Butcher, so I'm just going to watch everybody else play it.
I tried her on the PTR, and she was super fun.
It's fun, but man, I remember I was playing Lucio against it, and I kept booping people away right as he would apply the mark, and then it was actually helping the enemy team and not helping my own team because the tether, I'm like, yeah, my bad.
Heroics are kind of crazy.
What happens when you get cocooned and her heroic where you trap somebody?
You're like a pig in a blanket. You're not getting out.
Well, I mean, but 2 people make it a 3v5 right away. Either way, the Arthas does come out as predicted there. I think that's a solid pickup. It gives them that engage. It allows them to hard engage with the Nubrak, but also soft engage. Maybe get the lockdown, get the roots, get the slow, set up the Jaina. There's a lot of synergy here with the Space Station draft, but on the other side, you also have the potential slows from Blaze coming out that can thwart a lot of that aggression.
Blaze, Tassadar too. Yeah, I'm looking at the zone control for Space Station. They have a lot of control over the shrines. Between the Alexstrasza, between the Arthas too, they just have a lot of ways of being able to try to keep people off the shrine. Tempo Storm, they're a little more reliant on like the Ragnaros being able to get in, the Hanzo for the shrine clear too. They have Tassadar too. But I'm expecting to see them try to get pretty aggressive around those shrines, try to bully people off, maybe force the Dragon Queen to go away or do something to get it off of that shrine before Space Station can take the shrines.
I think that's going to be key, as we saw last night at the very end of last night. Tempo Storm played a very safe, normal draft and executed it perfectly and had a very easy Game 3 last night.
Well, let's see if they can do it again as we head into Game 1. Space Station takes on Tempo Storm.
Kicking things off today with our kickoff here of Space Station Gaming here on the left in blue. It will be Casanova back to Greymane. Equinox back to tank here. We are back and forth with these roles. Equinox going to be on the Anubarak, Jay Shrite on Jaina, Jason on Arthas, and Tomster on Alexstrasza.
In Tempo Storm, Glaurung's going to be playing his Ragnaros. Caterpillar on the Blaze, lighting it up. Sam, he'll be playing his Hanzo. Fan will be playing that Tassadar. In June, on Uther, Fan's Tassadar is no slouch. Don't take it lightly just because it's a Tassadar, because he will be in your face. Dimensional shifting in, Archoning, slowing you down, setting you up for the smash.
It really feels like Fan has a lot of balance when he plays Tassadar. He has like this controlled aggression style. He knows when to go in, when to be effective, and then also when to fall back. Nice 4-man stun there from Cattle. See a little bit of early aggression by both teams. Nothing to make of it, but it is a very... If you're looking at a top Tassadar player, in terms of like how to be aggressive and not, Fan's probably it.
Yeah, his Tassadar stats are exceptionally good. They definitely complement how good of play we've seen from him on that hero. 4-man rotating between mid and bot. J-Shred to build starting. possibly that has the lingering chill for the 2 extra seconds of having the chill, the slows, and the extra damage possibilities. We're also seeing Abundance build from Tomster. That's going to really help once he can start generating those glows. But Equinox in danger. Abundance already used, and Cattle capitalizes, going in with the jet propulsion and getting first blood.
I mean, Equinox went globe build, right? Regen Master, so it requires him to pick up globes. Also, the same can be said for Alexstrasza, who is going for her questing talent, which will eventually produce globes. Cattle saw him walking towards that and literally charged right in front of him, squatted on the globe, and his team was able to get the kill. Recognition by, if you're not going the globe talent as an Uberak, that doesn't happen. I'm not saying you shouldn't go the talent. I'm just saying the recognition from Cattle is what set that up, and that was almost a little too easy for Cattle.
Yeah, a new Barak player himself watching and knowing what would be happening with SpaceStation. And again, preying on the idea that Alexstrasza's heals, they take time. She doesn't really... Gift of Life you can do immediately, but that's not going to be able to keep you healed up the way that an Abundance, as you can see there, does. And the Abundance takes 3 seconds. It was just used to heal them back up as Equinox went back in. Tempo gets that first blood to try to dominate the early game rotations a bit more. Now feeling comfortable with that, getting their own camp, they'll march on forward and get the invade.
Tempo Storm has been doing this a lot, Gilly. They have been invading a lot of early camps, especially with all the new gameplay changes. See if Equinox just dives straight in. He does, but he's going to be a little bit late. Now I think he's going to be stuck in here.
Yeah, I used the burrow charge, but the Abundance is there as Cattle goes forward with another jet propulsion. SpaceStation are pushing back Tempo Storm. As in the top, you heard the Insta Molten Core, which seems to be a Glaurung trademark move. We've seen him do this quite a lot, and it's going to help him clear out that camp.
Again, and it's one of those things that could come back to bite you if you lose the Shrine. He used it to help clear the camp that was pushing while the rest of his team did the invade. So you trade off. You get a camp, you get a slight experience lead if you're Tempo Storm, but you trade it off for the expense of a Molten Core. If it works out, then your reward is higher. If it doesn't work out, it could come back to hurt you.
Yeah, especially with the Dragon Queen, but they're banking on the idea that they've done so much with the camp, the double camp in the mid, camp invade 2, SpaceStation has to deal with that. Let's Tempo Storm get on the Shrine faster and start to get a lead in those defenders, but as we talked about right before the game started, there's a lot of control over this zone for SpaceStation, and there's a lot of clear too with the Greymane and the Jaina. They're moving forward, getting on the point, and they're catching up rapidly in the skeletal defenders.
They are. I mean, we've still got Dragon Queen that could come out, but Equinox diving in the backside. Cattle doing his best to body block as well as do some damage, but the Dragon Queen is out as well in response.
Yeah, and the greater preservation that you get, that the bigger abundance from the Dragon Queen really coming in handy to allow SpaceStation to keep hold of this point a little bit longer. We see Tempo Storm starting to back off, sending back into lane. They're going to tap, but it's just too late. SpaceStation gets the first Punisher. They are a level behind, though. They need to be careful with this.
Yeah, they need to try and get as much as they can. Well, that will help them. They get the Glaurung takedown. Casanova continuing to shine. As we highlighted before when we saw the role change earlier in the weekend, Casanova has been that big point, Gillen.
Yeah, his Greymane has been on fire. The amount of kills that he has, very low deaths, puts him really high in the KD ratios, the KDAs too, even regionally, which is astounding considering this idea of where SpaceStation is in relativity to the rest of the North American teams and standings.
Things working out. The experience was indeed caught up there. No Molten Core, but that didn't matter. It's first Punisher, so not that condemning when you don't have that available. So obviously the risk did not pay off there, not having that to steal that Punisher away.
Yeah, the towers catch SpaceStation up in experience. Tempo Storm did what they could on the Shrine, made sure that they didn't overcommit to the defense of the Punisher too, so that way they could keep Ragnaros in the lane. The difficult part was losing that Ragnaros. That caught SpaceStation up a little bit closer than where Tempo Storm would have liked, ideally. Even if they had lost out on the Shrine, being able to soak multiple lanes with that.
There's probably a few people out grilling today. We've also got Blaze going grill and kill in this game.
It was slightly nerfed. It was increased damage of the ignited 25%. Now it's at 20%. But it seems to still be in line with what a lot of people are picking, especially here in North America. More Incinerator Gauntlets for Blazes over in Europe. But here in NA, as we start to see more and more Blaze pop up this weekend, no Blaze at all last weekend, he's still been working on that questing talent.
Yep, and that will pay off in the long run when it comes to those team fights. We'll see exactly how that works as that gets stacked. As it stands, both teams pretty even in terms of experience. Both teams trying to fight towards level 10 as our next shrine will be here in the middle. That should be soon.
Top camp going to get picked up by the Ragnaros. Secured there, as that will push along with that one. The shrine is going to be in the middle. But with 10 on the horizon for both of these teams, they're just playing as safely as they can. SpaceStation starting to head up to the top, though, to clear that camp out and maybe get a pick on Glowering if he steps too far forward. He hasn't bitten yet. Howling Blast connects. Equinox goes in for the hit. Has the Impale up too. He's keeping himself alive. He uses the Sulfurous Smash as to his demise as he went down. 75 seconds until he'll have that up. Just 20 until he's back.
That looked good, Gilly.
It did.
I mean, that was stun, and just got blasted. I mean, that is SpaceStation in a nutshell. If you're looking for this team to excel, to fight back, to take games, that is how they function. This is what they revolve around. It's not just that they pulled it off, it's just that the way that they did it. There was no hesitation in the way that everybody functioned there. They continue to replicate that. Things could look good for SpaceStation in the series.
Yeah, they've been able to keep up to the mid-game now as the Shrine will be activating in 13 seconds. And part of the wombo possibilities, or at least the combinations of abilities for Tempo Storm, is not going to be there for 30 as they don't have Sulfurous Smash back. But I do believe he has Molten Core for this fight. He hasn't used it since the time earlier on at about 2:30.
Now they're busy clearing up the camp top, which is giving them a big lead.
Yeah, the timing of that camp was much more favorable for SpaceStation. The Tempo Storm got it early on, then they lost their Ragnaros because of that pick. 18 to the 3, and Dragon Queen hasn't been used yet for Tomster.
It hasn't. I think that'll be the response when we do see that Molten Core. If we see the, actually, it's just going to come out now.
Yeah, I think he's going to save it for a defending the Punisher now, because Tempo Storm were way too late to get on this point, thanks to the camp, thanks to the clear that was necessary from them. Tempo Storm going to have to play on the back foot again with another Punisher phase.
Now, one of the cool plays that we saw there, the aggression that we saw when Equinox dove in, Cattle had finished his level 1 talent with the new habits. He used that his trait to get the unstoppable to make sure he didn't go in. It's a good counterplay there by Tempo Storm. Either way, we've got a Punisher here pushing with SpaceStation. Getting a bit of damage in, but Molten Core doing a lot of damage in return to the Punisher.
Yeah, it's got it about to half health now as SpaceStation takes out the gate and starts to move on forward. Double stun. Equinox was looking to follow that up quickly. Caterpillar's here to try to slow things down, using the combustion too as Fan comes around from the side. Tempo Storm hoping they can keep this fight going with the Cocoon catching June in the back line. Water Elementals now come out with the Cleansing Flame. The Dragon's Arrow is huge. The Sulfurous Smash to follow up too as Caterpillar and the rest of Tempo Storm steps forward, taking out Greymane.
That combo nasty. Now they've got Jason in their sights. The oil is down, keeping the slow. He's getting the self-heal. He's got Icebound Fortitude for some armor there. It's going to be just fine as he gets away. Jay Shrite taking a little bit of poke as well, but that was killer combo.
Tempo were posturing for a long time to make that kill, that aggression happen. Saw Caterpillar off to one side. Fan had been flanking for about a minute down in the bottom, just using storms, trying to soften up where he could. The team dealt with the Punisher and then dealt with June being in the Cocoon and using that Blaze to be able to chase down SpaceStation all the way back to their base. Having that adhesive petroleum for the additional slow once you light up the oil spill and if the people are on it. And then the jet propulsion, he timed those abilities really well to just continually keep a stun on someone so that the rest of Tempo Storm could follow suit. And of course, Psalm landed a great Dragon's Arrow.
It's one of the reasons I like Caterpillar as a player. He's one of the most cerebral players. You know, he's clearly thinking everything through. I'm not saying other players don't, as we've got a June going to go down here momentarily. But it's just like he picks things up quickly. He thinks about things. He digests it. He wants to learn. He wants to be the best at his role. And that's my favorite part about watching Caterpillar play. And it doesn't matter what role he's on, he's always going to excel.
You know, these picks have seemed kind of uncharacteristic for Tempo Storm, losing out Glowering on the top and now June in the mid. But it's a testament that SpaceStation feels a lot more comfortable than they did in the last series. At least it feels that way. Now being back on, having Casanova play that Greymane and Equinox on a warrior that can allow them to follow that kind of aggression that he is known for.
Yeah, and I like it a lot. And our talking point with SpaceStation coming into the weekend was getting the stabilization, getting the familiar heroes, not being so aggressive in Equinox's role, and allowing his team to make plays. So far, We're 10, 11 minutes in. They're up 3 kills to 2. They've obtained both Punishers, and they've done really well so far. They're not exactly commanding, but they're doing well, and technically they're winning the game at the moment, but it's even enough that it could go either way.
Yeah, for Tempo Storm, the best thing is that they have been able to stabilize every time they lose someone, every time they lose a Punisher. They've only lost the single fort, and so there's always a possible moment for them to catch up. It's not like the situation versus Team 12 or versus Team Freedom. In a lot of the games of those series where they were a lot further behind, they still did their best and stayed within about a level and a half, but they did lose the first keep. And here they're on track at any moment to turn things around if they're given the chance.
They are. SpaceStation also picked up the Shaman camp up at the top, so that will give them some push. If this drags on, that fort could potentially go down if there's enough time. Right now, though, this is tremendous lead for Tempo.
Yeah, that's so much. When you have a Molten Core, that's pretty much it. Glaurung's already going back. SpaceStation knows it, though. They know it. They're going for the engage. They've got June underneath in the cocoon, but the fan and the combustion's enough to push away SpaceStation. Dragon's Arrow hits a lot of SpaceStation. The slow is too much for Jay Shrita as the Archon damage confirms the kill.
Everything that Psalm has done has juked the attacks. That is 2 plays where he's used that natural agility to get out of danger. Casanova jumped in the first go around, he hops over the wall. Same thing that time. Also, the nice Divine Shield by June. I mean, they are making plays right now.
You know what's really cool, though, is that SpaceStation engaged while that Molten Core was active, and that drew the fire of Glaurung away from those skeletal defenders. The problem is they lost Jaina. They're fighting this a 4v5. They did significant damage to Psalm, and they did force Divine Shield, those kinds of things to be used. So they feel like they're still comfortable being able to fight for a while, especially as long as Alex Strauss' heals can keep going out. They do take a kill on Tassadar, but it's as the Punisher is taken by Tempo Storm.
Casanova hitting the cocktail on the backside there. Nice play. That Shaman camp that was picked up before then did take the entire fort. So as it stands, Glaurung. Wait a minute, Equinox is actually going to be the one that falls there.
1 for 1. Ragnaros went down 2. SpaceStation are keeping Tempo Storm from being able to do anything with this Punisher. Now it's June, Psalm, Cattle, Psalm extremely low. There's combustion that goes in with a jet propulsion at the same time, keeping the slows going. As he goes out, he can't live, but he does at least save June and Psalm. And the Punisher took out the fort in the bottom. SpaceStation are making plays.
It's even in terms of what the Punisher obtained versus what that camp obtained, and that's pretty wild to think about. This is one of those games where I want to watch back. I want to talk to Casanova afterwards. Like, man, all those times you're like diving and you're just like swinging at air. I mean, Psalm is literally juking every time, and it's got to be frustrating, but at the same time, it's like you got to respect that, right? Like if you're Casanova, you're like, yeah, I respect it, but it's frustrating. Like, stop it. Every time he's jumped in, he's like swinging at air.
So I'm showing a lot of practice on one of our newest heroes, Hanzo. SpaceStation are going to come in for an invade using the zoning water elemental. I liked in that last fight too when Equinox dove in. Glaurung now has 16, so he had the extra giant Scorcher damage. Doesn't give him for the extra heals, but did help them make sure that he at least traded out with a kill on Equinox. But SpaceStation are fighting at cool times. Like the fight to force Molten Core not to give them a free shrine when Tempo Storm had the earlier skeletal defenders. Then fighting down at the bottom, they lost their fort, but they got another kill for it as they took out Caterpillar. And it has helped them maintain that lead that they got earlier on in the game.
I feel like that situation right there would have been a, hey, maybe we'll fight situation. Equinox used his Impale, got the Disrupt, they captured the camp, they walked away. It really feels like SpaceStation is definitely playing within themselves a little bit more in this series to just play safer, but play strong, play firm. Right now they're going in for a camp invade. They have serious damage to clear that, and they take away so much control from Tempo. Shrine is in the top lane, but that does take away just another advantage that Tempo could have had.
Yeah, they're going to get their camp up as well. It's always been up right before the Shrine phase, and it's going to be up just right now. So for Tempo, they've continually had a lot of problems with this top lane. The nice thing, though, is at least even though they don't have the well, they don't have the fort in the top, if they win the Punisher or even win the fight around it, they can push that down and then go along with the Punisher. But if SpaceStation are able to get this Shrine, then it'll be huge for them since there's no fort left for Tempo Storm to defend that.
Jaina showed at the bottom, so Tempo decided to push in here. And I think that SpaceStation playing reserve, they realize they don't have to take the fight. They have almost a level lead, which will give them potentially 20 in the middle of this, obtain another Punisher, and that Shaman camp that did work, oh, by the way, expose that keep in the top lane. So things could actually work out here for SpaceStation. They're playing a much more macro-focused game than I would have anticipated, and I'm liking it so far.
Yeah, but Tempo Storm, we're seeing if they can force the issue versus SpaceStation. They've pushed this wave up quite a bit, used the Psionic Echo to get some damage done to the fort. Let me see if they find anyone out, maybe in the rotation down to mid. Tempo Storm feel the burn that is SpaceStation getting close to those Storm Talons. Jaina was in the bottom, that was pushed. Tempo Storm heads all the way there, trying to catch up with that experience, making sure they don't lose out on that. Just looking anywhere for their Storm Talons so they can rejoin the fight.
So right now, Tempo Storm will likely try and look to backdoor the bottom lane keep. This is their major play. Without 20, they're going to look to take structures or they're going to look to backdoor. If they backdoor the back keep, then that forces a response out of SpaceStation. It also gives them time.
Yeah, mid allows them to catch up faster. You can see they're already starting backs because a lot of people are off the map for SpaceStation, and they could have been pushing up in that top, doing a ton of damage to the structure even prior to the Punisher getting there so that they can get more done from that. Tempo Storm send back to defend, but that means they're no longer pushing as hard in that mid lane to take that structure.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, a lot of times we'll see teams backdoor one keep, and then the other team, like SpaceStation, would just instantly push in that lane, making that Punisher even more painful. And as it stands, it looks like they're going to show a few members in the bot lane, or at least consider it. They're just going to have to defend. They've got Molten Core, but SpaceStation with 20 tier, which Tempo should possibly have soon. You see Blaze trying in the middle. But this is a potential game in a moment for SpaceStation. It's not a high guarantee, but it is a strong probability.
Yeah, that it is. SpaceStation's getting onto the keep now. We'll see where Ragnaros wants to Molten Core from. It looks like from the mid, and that's where they're going to bait down the Punisher to. 20 here for Tempo Storm. Fan using that Twilight Archon that he is known for. With Molten Core doing more to do damage to the hero, showing that Tempo Storm feel like they can confidently deal with the Punisher, and they need to get more done on the hero so they don't lose the game here. Caterpillar takes a monstrous amount of damage from Jay Shrita and the Punisher. Fan is all but dead. He falls. SpaceStation have been in the director's chair for this entire game, and they're looking to end it.
They're looking to end it. You got to credit Equinox using his rewind there. They already forced out the dimensional shift, and Equinox is making plays. This core is falling 50% and going down. SpaceStation has taken game number 1 here. I want to see that last play to point out what Equinox did. The reservation that he had and the reservation that he showed this entire game is everything that we could have ever asked for from Equinox in this tank role. We saw them switch in our first series of the weekend. They've gone back to him on tank. He looks like a new tank, but he has to keep this up for their team's success. It's relieving that this was our talking point coming into the weekend, was having the stability, the less aggression. Psalm even talked about it in his interview. Equinox curbed some of that himself, allowed the rest of his team to make plays, but it was Equinox there at the end of that last team fight, got the stun, forced out the shift, used rewind, faked like he was leaving, came back, and then Alex Straza went into the old cleansing flame and got the kill shot.
Jayho, do you think it's possible that either, one, SpaceStation role swapped on purpose in their series versus Skillforce as the ultimate mind game somehow versus Tempo? I would look at it and say no, because that series for SpaceStation probably more important, the more winnable series, I guess I would look at it for SpaceStation. But any chance that that's a mind game for them? Or two, that they saw that interview with Psalm, and Psalm said they were going to pick on Casanova as Warrior, and they said, no, you're not.
I mean, it's kind of like surprising somebody with an onside kick to start the second half, something like that. I mean,
thought we were over this.
What happened?
Nothing.
Oh. Well, anyways, you know, you could have gone